How do the spaces we inhabit, the art we encounter, shape our emotions and thoughts, especially as we age? Today, we talk about a world where architecture meets art and lifelong learning, a space where curiosity fuels our everyday, no matter our age or stage in life. Today, my guest is Lauren Henkin, the founder and CEO of the Humane Space, an innovative platform that's redefining how we engage with art and education throughout our lives. Lauren's journey from shaping luxury wellness amenities to exploring the depths of creativity through her architectural expertise, she is now on a mission to enrich the lives with moments of awe and discovery. In our conversation today, we talk about how the humane space is transforming the way that older adults and caregivers interact with art, offering a sanctuary for the mind where imagination and learning come together. We explore the science behind this artistic engagement and share the tangible ways to invite more curiosity and mindfulness into our daily routines, proving it's never too late to explore and learn and feel inspired. Here is my interview with Lauren Henkin. Hi, Lauren. The day is here. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
I am too. And especially after I downloaded the app and I had a chance to look at it and walk through all of the different features, I was like, this is so beautiful and lovely. And I just cannot wait to let everyone know that it's out there. So, really, really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, yes. And there's reasons why it's so amazing. And we're going to talk all about that. I am excited to learn more about your story and the journey that led you not only to found the Humane Space, but how your background really influenced where we are in this venture that you have now.
Yeah, so I have kind of a weird background. I studied architecture in school, which I realized probably a few years after graduating that what made the education so interesting and unique was that it was very much curiosity inspired. And
Mhm.
so they took kind of an approach, which again, at the time I didn't realize was so maybe out of the norm, but instead of kind of using only demonstration as the method for teaching, it was very much about following your personal passion, about following your gut, as a means to problem solve and innovate.
Mhm.
And so it really had a lasting impact on me, especially in thinking about how to use curiosity as a means for problem solving and innovation. But so that was my education. And then I spent about 20 years working in my family's business, which became one of the country's largest design and management firms for wellness facilities. So I was very much involved in the wellness environment. While I was doing that, I was also a practicing artist for 20 years, had many museum shows in photography and sculpture. And so I had kind of this interesting combination of things. And that's just how I've always been by nature a very curious person. Um, and, I think when COVID hit, like everyone, I was really assessing my own well-being and thinking about changes that I wanted to make in my life, and really started thinking about the times in my life when I felt the most nourished, the most alive, the most energized, the most healthy. And those times all really had one thing in common, and that those were times when I was really able to pursue a personal passion or express my own curiosity or explore new terrain. Um, and so all of those things kind of came together for the idea behind the Humane Space, which is really all about trying to help people live more curiously in daily life.
Yeah, I know when we had our first conversation, I remember thinking, we have to talk about this and we have to share, and obviously our conversation today, the humane space reaches all ages, right? All different adults in various ways, but with our lens of looking at older adults and caregivers, just how the impact that curiosity, imagination, how do we uh, show up curiously differently as we age? I know that that was one of the things that we had touched on, and just not even knowing how to articulate that, but just the importance of having the mindfulness, having that innovation, and looking at ways to have an impact on our life in just so many positive areas. So, with your background, first, I love it's not weird at all. I think it's just adds more richness, right, to our story. But you've had the opportunity to be featured in Architectural Digest, work with museums like the Museum of Fine Art. And there's this role, given your background with art and architecture, in enhancing the emotional well-being in the lives of people, older adults. And I think it's such an important conversation, specifically with our caregivers, right, as we're caring for other people. How have you seen that play a role in enhancing our well-being? And I know that's like a real big question, but looking at how we
Yeah.
do that.
I mean, I think one thing I guess I would start with is that just curiosity itself is something that I think we often associate mostly with childhood. It's not something that we think about necessarily as it might impact well-being. I think pretty much as we start to transition maybe out of college or out of our education years into adulthood, and a variety of things start to take over our time during those things, becoming parents, becoming caregivers, earning a living, the stress of all these other different things. But curiosity is really a thread that runs through our lives. And I think really one thing to recognize is that I don't see it as something that really necessarily increases or diminishes as we age, but I think it's more about how we articulate curiosity changes.
Mm.
So there was a great book that just came out about toddlers and about how we can learn from toddlers, and how so much of what they do is about
Yeah.
expressing curiosity. For them, it's putting things in their mouths, it's touching things, it's asking a lot of questions, right? And then as we age, that articulation maybe starts to change. And so maybe we're traveling more, maybe we're reading different types of material, maybe we're exploring the museum environment. And as we get older and older, those things change too, depending on physical capabilities, mental capabilities, financial capabilities.
Mm.
And so, what we're focused on is trying to kind of help people first recognize that this is a thread that runs through our lives, a wonderful thread that we have control over. There's so many things in life that we don't have control over,
Mhm.
but how we articulate curiosity is something that we can each decide for ourselves, whether it's reading a great book that we love, or being immersed in a museum exhibition, or staring at a ladybug as we're on a daily walk. As far as kind of art and architecture and how these things kind of come into play, I think art is kind of an interesting thing because, and I used to talk about this a lot with artists, it doesn't necessarily serve a functional purpose. It's
Mm.
not going to wash dishes for you. In most cases, there might be an occasional artwork out there that includes a dishwasher, but it's not going to mow the lawn for you. But there are these powerful ways in which it can have a significant impact, which includes, overall health and well-being. I think it impacts one's sense of independence,
Mm.
keeping cognitively engaged. I think when you are engaging a piece of art that you've never seen before, it's kind of like flexing a different muscle in a
Mhm.
sense. You're kind of activating something that hasn't necessarily been activated before. Kind of like a personal trainer is maybe telling you not to always exercise the same muscles. I think art is a great way to kind of, stretch and strengthen different muscles that maybe aren't activated in daily life.
Oh, that's such a great way to look at it. And I like how you talk about, the thread of curiosity is going with us throughout our lifespan. And the words, too, that come to mind that I know you also speak to is that wonder and that awe. And I think at times life can be hard and we lose a little bit of that. Those things,
Yeah.
all of that, right? So the reminder of being able to come back to our center and dive into what brings us that joy through those different ways. There is, you touched on it a little bit at the end, the science behind how when we engage with art, how does that benefit us? And I know there's lots of different ways, but particularly, for families and older adults, life can bring stress, anxiety, burnout, all of those different things. And so how do we really, I don't know if quantify is the right word, but look at what are some of the facts of how that can help us improve our well-being.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of research on art. I think that certainly there's been like overwhelming conclusions made about it having a positive cognitive impact, quality of life outcomes. Looking at art can help create new neural pathways. It can help like kind of reshape and adapt and restructure brain areas. It helps the brain's hemispheres kind of communicate and connect better. And it also, I think it's important to think about the way that you engage art as a viewer versus a maker. So
Mm,
for example, a maker of art, my partner's mother is 93 and she's still making sculpture.
mhm,
And making art can actually increase blood circulation and blood flow and strengthen the muscles in the wrist. Obviously, that depends on what kind of art one is practicing, but there's other ways that it can be beneficial too. It can spark conversation. It can spark greater connectedness. If you're sharing that experience with someone else, it can reduce stress, provide opportunities to socialize, and provide opportunities for self-expression. I think as we get older, providing a channel for self-expression
mm,
is becomes more difficult. And really kind of connecting someone to their own preferences. I know that sounds kind of maybe a little strange maybe, but connecting someone to how they perceive the world,
mm,
their own kind of measure of how they take in the world is something that can also have an impact. It really emphasizes connecting with your true self, which can have impacts on things, for example, as you make medical decisions about your health. So having a strong sense of kind of who I am, what do I like, what do I think of this?
mm,
All of those things can be kind of fostered even by looking at a painting and saying, "Oh, I like this one not so much." Well, why not? Why does this one spark something within you and this one doesn't? Even that kind of internal dialogue can help you better have a stronger sense of self and still feel like you are learning, engaging, connecting. And so all of those things combined, there's a lot of complexity involved, I think, as one is just even looking at one painting.
right.
And that doesn't have to be in a museum either. There's been some studies that talked about the awe state, for example, that can be induced simply by looking at a picture. It doesn't have
Mm,
to be in the actual place. And so that's been something that's been very meaningful to us as we've developed the humane space, is thinking about how can we prompt those inner dialogues, those exercises where people can have those reactions and feel like they're engaged.
Well, I would love for you to walk us through the humane space. So, for people listening that haven't
Yeah.
downloaded the app yet, but they need to. What does that look like? Walk us through what can we see? How do we interact with it?
Yeah, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the research behind curiosity. That's really important. And that really has formed the foundation for so much of what we do with the humane space. And I think just broadly, when I was talking about that thread that ties through all different phases of life, what was so fascinating to me was that, curiosity has been associated in research through, I think, maybe more expected outcomes, like your ability to build knowledge, for example. But there's so many other unexpected outcomes that for me, I never thought about, like forging stronger social relationships. So,
Mhm.
for example, if you're in a conversation with someone and you're curious about that person, I think typically that conveys to the other person, and it's easier to kind of forge a stronger connection to that person the more that curiosity is articulated. Innovation in the workplace, but even just problem solving. I think the more curious you are, it has been tied to kind of finding outcomes to problems. Stress and overall well-being, it has definitely been tied to finding greater meaning in life. And I think as we talk about older adults,
Mhm.
finding meaning in life is a really great outcome to try and tie to curiosity. And there's all different ways that we can unpack that, but I think just recognizing that. And so everything that we're doing with the humane space is trying to focus on the research that has been done in this particular area and craft these experiences to try and prompt those outcomes. And so, what does that mean? What does that mean for the app?
Yeah.
It means basically sort of a daily menu, I would say, of experiences that include a wide variety, like ones that are focused on lifelong learning, ones that are focused on communication and language and how we communicate with one another. There's another section that focuses on self-reflection, which is really about trying to get people to connect with their true self, which we
Mhm.
talked a little bit about. And then finally, there's a section called Mind Journeys, which are guided visualizations, which we actually created initially for caregivers and cancer patients. And so all of these things kind of combine as a way to spark one's curiosity, to help them connect with those passions that they have, connect with themselves, connect with others in a way that fosters these outcomes that have been documented for curiosity and awe.
Yeah, I loved how when I walked through the one today where it takes you through, so it's so easy to use, it's very intuitive, but I love the sections where it's like immerse. Did I get that right? Immerse.
Yep,
And
yep,
then it goes through with the deep think, kind of dives a little
yep,
bit deeper. And then the lingo, which talks about language.
yep.
And I just was like, oh my gosh, I learned something new today, which was so fun. And it was I think what I love is that when you're surprised by things and when you learn new things as we go through our day, just how much we can also then take what we learn to connect with other people. You were talking about how it strengthens relationships. And I remember I would have some people come visit the senior living community where I worked, and some of the volunteers, and they were not quite sure how to interact with the different residents. And my advice to them was, be curious, ask questions. And when you do that, it starts conversation and then you learn about each other and then you can ask more questions and right, start to
It
grow this dialogue.
exactly. I mean, I think, one of the things that makes the app unique and kind of the approach a little bit unique is that there is so much happening around us all the time that is really quite magnificent.
Mhm.
Whether it's looking at a child sort of discovering something new in the world, to watching a hummingbird, get nutrients from a flower, to watching cloud formations, to watching light move across a wall. I mean, it could be almost anything. And I think, we've been kind of a little bit overrun with the 24/7 news cycle, with other worries happening in the world. And I think this is a way to kind of recenter, re-energize. There's a lot of different apps that focus on quieting the mind. This is really about well-being techniques for people with active minds, for people who are constantly want that sense of engagement with the world and their surroundings. And it's a way to kind of develop a daily flow that where you're learning about something in the world, and that's that immerse section, followed by the deep think, which is about, well, how do I take this knowledge now and think about how it impacts maybe my own perspective or helps me get to understand what my perspective is on this information in a way that's you're not being judged on social media. If you're commenting, it's just a way for you to have a personal thought about how you see things.
No, I liked it so much. And I've noticed for myself in the last few years, we're all busy. Work is busy, life, and it's heavy. There's a lot of heavy, hard things going on. And I found myself not able to watch certain TV shows or even open up my social media sometimes because I feel this anxiousness,
Yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
heaviness about everything that's going on. And when I was interacting with the app, I felt this like it was almost like this safe place of I can learn, but I'm not going to be faced with anything that is going to be like spiking my cortisol
No,
or in a
exactly.
negative way. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I think you mentioned before what's been really surprising to me is that we have college students
Mhm.
using it and we have seniors using it, this
Mhm.
wide range of ages, and they're interested in different aspects of it.
Mhm.
Students are interested because for them it's a way to incorporate learning without the stress and
Mhm.
pressure of constant test taking or expectations. And on the other side of things, I think it's about feeling a sense of expansiveness.
Yes.
And sometimes I think as we get older, there's a sense of compression in terms of thinking about what our experiences can be in the world, how we can engage the world. Can we still travel the way that we once did? Can we still move the way that we once did? We're really always thinking about ways to help people feel expansive in their thinking and that the world is open and bigger than even maybe what they can physically or mentally experience in that moment.
I know. And you and I had also visited about the Blue Zone, the Blue
Yeah,
your TV show came out and you were sharing, so much of the longevity is tied to the curiosity in that and the artistic pursuits.
I think if you haven't watched the Blue Zone documentary on Netflix, I definitely recommend it. And you'll see throughout all of those segments, there is curiosity from people still making musical instruments into their 80s or 90s to the act of gardening to how people engage with others in their community to people just walking daily and experiencing their surroundings. There was a study done that tracked, I think it was 3,000 men between the ages of 60 and 65. And the study concluded that the more that these 60-year-olds incorporated a curious lifestyle, the more likely they were to be alive at 65. And I think what was so helpful with the Blue Zones documentary was that it brought in a very relatable way these concepts that we talk about a lot about curiosity, about awe, about walking, the importance of walking as just as important in the conversation about how to live well as eating well, as sleep, getting enough sleep, as physical fitness. And so, yeah, it was fantastic to see these adults, living very full lives and still feeling that sense of expansiveness,
Yeah.
into into their 100s, so it was
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah, it really was. And as a caregiver, I think we also have moments where we feel that our life's interrupted. It's something we maybe didn't choose. Some of us do, some of us don't. There's stress involved. There is also maybe not an inclination towards using what we call, I would say, like typical traditional meditation and
Yeah.
having mindfulness. How do you see those practices, or for people that are like maybe hesitant to exploring that, what advice would you give them on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting myself. Well, first of all, let me start by saying, meditation has been widely studied and its benefits are vast. And I find that I benefit in different ways. For example, with by taking maybe an awe walk or by working on a piece of artwork or some other activities, gardening. And so for some people, meditation is doesn't come easily or naturally. And I hear this a lot from people who are using the app is they kind of say, very quietly, like, I just can't meditate, or I wish I could, but I can't, that's what they say. And I think there's an expectation that, they're just supposed to be able to block out, an active mind in their first session of meditation. And of course, that's an unrealistic expectation. But I think one of the things that we're trying to offer people is maybe it's almost like if you think of it as like a stepping stone towards meditation, which is mindful activities, being in the present, bringing people into the present, activating their senses, trying to get them to think about specific things without judgment. And so I think there's definitely a place for meditation, and we even have some guided meditation on the app. But I think the people who are really drawn to the humane space are people who, for whatever reason, struggle with meditation, but
Mhm.
still want to benefit from some of the stress and anxiety reduction, from some of the benefits of being in the present and having their senses activated, just in different ways.
Is guided imagery, does that function similar to meditation?
I wouldn't classify it as meditation. I think the way that I think of the guided imagery that we have, and I should say that we created them, like I said, for cancer patients and caregivers because it had been widely studied and used in the hospital setting.
Mm.
And we had picked up on that and read about the incredible benefits of it, especially with stress reduction, anxiety reduction. I think the way people typically experience guided imagery is if you think about maybe going to a happy place for
Mhm.
you, I think typically guided imagery in that way. We kind of put a little bit of a different spin on it in that we created guided imagery that actually takes people in their minds to particular locations.
Mm.
So maybe it's the Grand Canyon, maybe it's a beach in Hawaii, maybe it's to see the Northern Lights in Iceland, or a botanical garden in South Korea.
Mhm.
And so they're definitely I would say mindful experiences.
Mhm.
I think your senses are activated. We're trying to have people be in the present moment. We're trying to help them make them aware of their surroundings and these experiences, and really to try and transport people, especially people who can't travel or who can't still have that experience of travel,
Yeah.
to still feel like they're able to experience something new in the
Mhm.
world. So they're, for the most part, real places, but the purpose of ours is to really activate the mind, activate the imagination in as relaxing and soothing way as possible. There's been a lot of research about the benefits of nature. Listening to bird song, for example, has been shown to be very relaxing and soothing. And so we incorporate a lot of that sense of connectedness to nature in
Mhm.
those guided imagery experiences as well.
Yes, yes. And when we can't, having the constraints of whether it's responsibility or our
Yep.
mobility changes and things like that, and the ability to transport when we physically can't, but we can do that with our imagination, with the creativity, overcoming some of those medical diagnoses.
Totally. And I think with caregivers,
Mm.
particularly we work with a hospital system in San Francisco where we provide these guided imagery experiences for both patients and nurses
Mm.
and caregivers. And it's a way, even for just 10 minutes, to kind of um, be transported somewhere else to get that kind of moment of nourishment from nature, from sound, from travel, from new experience, from awe. All
Mhm.
of these things kind of combine, I think, I hope, in a way that's energizing and for those caregivers and nurses and patients to feel like I feel a little bit refreshed now. I feel a little bit renewed. I'm better able to project positive outcomes.
Mhm.
I'm better able to think optimistically.
Mm.
I'm better able to kind of think expansively.
So good. I've loved learning from you, and I want to hear how do we, as not only older adults, but caregivers, cultivate curiosity, awe in our daily lives when we're experiencing, challenge, potentially health issues?
It's a great question. I think the first thing is, what are your personal interests and passions? So for one person, it might be reading poetry. For another person, it might be drawing. For another person, it might be going outdoors and looking at nature. So that's sort of a great starting point is to just say, like, for me, what sparks my curiosity? When have I been curious? And then to think about, just repeating that particular activity.
Mm.
There's other ways that we suggest in the app and that we do in the app that I can also recommend here that are really easy ways for people who don't have a lot of time, who may have limited mobility, or even just not a lot of time to
Yeah.
do all these things. So one way is to take an awe walk, which is not necessarily related to thinking about your heart rate or strengthening muscles or things like that, but really walking for the pleasure of walking and experiencing the world is how I would think of it. We have some guided all walks on the app where we talk about, for example, the history of the word tree. And
Mm.
then we have people do some slow looking exercises at wherever they are. And that could be experienced even while sitting down and just taking those couple of minutes to do some slow looking. Another great way is there's so much art available online. You could go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art's website or any local museum's website, pick a painting, put it on your screen or your phone, and just look at it, for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And you'll realize during those 3 minutes how much detail there is. Maybe you see something about color that you didn't notice before. I mean, if you pull up Monet's water lilies on your screen, even on your phone, wherever you can, and you just look at that painting for 5 minutes, that in and of itself can really reset your frame of mind. Um, Bring you back into the present, and give you a sense of connectedness, I think, to the world. So that's another way to practice curiosity. And then, guided imagery. You don't have to listen to ours. You could even just close your eyes for a few minutes and put yourself in a location that has had meaning to you. Maybe it was a family vacation spot that you used to go to. Maybe it was going to a baseball game as a kid. Just kind of remembering, purposefully trying to remember the smells, the what you heard in those moments, what you saw, again, can be just a quick way to kind of fire up that sense of curiosity, fire up your energy, and help you, feel connected.
Completely. And it's the fuel that keeps us going. We need we need that. And it's been wonderful. It's never too late to explore and learn and feel inspired. Where can we learn more and connect with you and download the app and all of the things?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly download the app. It's available for Android and iOS. Feel free to connect with me. I talk with people. You can come to our website. We have resources on our website. We have a page specifically about curiosity, wonder, and awe, which will take you down the rabbit hole of curiosity research into these different areas, which there's some fascinating stuff out there. And we are, like I said, on the app, we are working with some museums. So we're going to be publishing some really great collaborations with a couple of renowned institutions. So even if you can't travel, you can still learn about the Museum of Fine Art in Boston, their jewelry collection. We're going to be doing a special week with them. We're going to be doing a special week with the Denver Art Museum about their textile collection. So really think expansively about the world and always pursue your passions at any age. That is what the humane space is all about, and hopefully it will be for you too.
I love that. Yes. And I can't wait to see all of that come out. And I'll be looking for it and celebrating that when that happens. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us and bringing that awe and wonder to our lives. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Are you looking for more support and community? We sure are. That is why I'm so happy to highlight one of my favorite podcasts in the caregiving community, Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver, hosted by my friends and sisters Natalie Elliott Handy and JJ Elliott Hill. They offer a unique blend of personal storytelling, expert advice, and candid conversations that shed light on the real-life challenges and triumphs that caregivers face. Tune in to Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver wherever you enjoy your podcasts, or explore more on their website at www.confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.